Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Fresh Apps Podcast. This podcast is all about store apps and the partners that bring them to you. Today, we're happy to have with us Cerna Solutions and Roger Enriquez, who is a integration architect with Cerna. And we're going to be talking about their CapIO automated testing application for ServiceNow. So we've also got along today a special bonus expert, Dave Slusher, who's a platform evangelist at ServiceNow. And so Dave will be helping me with the questions and asking some kind of expert level stuff to Roger about how the solution works. So with that, let's get started. So first of all, welcome, Roger, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. So, hey, we're very interested in CapIO. But before we get to that, maybe you could just give the audience, an overview of Cerna and kind of what you guys do.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Cerna Solutions, we're a privately owned company and we're headquartered in San Diego, although we have partners and projects all over the U.S. We're primarily focused on ServiceNow, actually exclusively. We do a lot of ITSM, HR, GRC, security, CMS, discovery. ServiceNow is huge, and we're definitely involved in all of that as well. We're huge fans of the platform since we've been in the organizations and see the value it provides. And in addition to that, we provide applications such as CapIO to help further users with onboarding on ServiceNow.
Cool. You've actually got a couple of apps in the store already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep, exactly. Sure. We have hybrid. Basically, that helps automate Okta workflows. And in addition to that, we also have a meeting management tool called TrackMeet.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So maybe tell us about your role at Cerna, what you do, and kind of what your day looks like at Cerna.
Sure. So by title, integrations architect. I'll jump into different companies, help them integrate with maybe other platforms besides ServiceNow. Of course, the usual SAP integrations or maybe Workday. And then, of course, there's the kind of the one-offs of we have a legacy system that we need to maybe push data to for ServiceNow or pull from. So I help integrate and implement those. In addition to that, and that's actually been my primary focus as of lately, is product development, specifically around CapIO.
Cool. Could you maybe talk about a couple of customers that that you've worked with?
Sure. For integrations or for, I guess, testing for CapIO?
Either. Just
sure.
Give
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with some pretty large companies, kind of more in the of course your usual Fortune 500s. That's the big group. ServiceNow is geared towards. So there's been some pretty big projects that we worked on. Let's see, for maybe user information. We had a pretty heavy requirement from a customer that needed to have real-time user data and configuration pushed into the instance. We helped out there, which was a pretty heavy customization. They had kind of arbitrary payloads, not even structured XML. That was definitely a beast, but we were able to get that done, and surprisingly real time and very, very fast and efficient. So that's definitely a feather in my cap, because that was something that we thought very early on that was really pushing the bounds of the platform. But fortunately, ServiceNow made it very easy for us to get that done.
That's great. In terms of CapIO, where are you guys at with your rollout?
We are out in production. We have a partner in Florida that's actually using the application now. And from some of the feedback that we've been given, it's actually been pretty fantastic. A lot of new features are coming from that, and those are actually going to be rolling out here in the near future. This is ready for production. This is ready for organizations to start adopting and getting automation into their companies.
Cool. So, maybe just kind of give us the overview on kind of, why you built CapIO. I mean, what you saw or didn't see, out in the market. Sort of, why you built it, and then just maybe an overview, a high level overview of CapIO.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So CapIO is honestly, I guess, kind of the result of a lot of years of frustration with late night phone calls of something being broken in production, or releases needing to be rolled back for fairly obvious things that could have been caught early. So what we did is we went through kind of that natural progression that happens, which is, okay, we are now a gigantic ServiceNow implementation, and it takes us 3 weeks to do a regression. Then you end up going through, okay, let's fix it with process. How about we stagger our QA, and our QA gets 3 weeks, then our devs do 3 weeks, and then we hand off, and so on. And either way, you end up with crazy release cycles. So eventually get to automation. How can we make it faster? And unfortunately, a lot of those end up as proofs of concepts that just kind of collect dust somewhere within your organization. That folks will go through, poke around with Selenium, get a couple of tests automated, and inevitably, a release comes up, an upgrade for ServiceNow. And, ServiceNow is always making changes and always finding better ways to do things, which of course means that you may actually have some brittle tests. So that's inevitably an obstacle that people run into. So taking all of that experience, we try to figure out, how can we make it better? How can we alleviate those issues? And that's where CapIO came from. And CapIO itself is an automated functional testing solution. And what that means is we provide a solution and a product that allows people to author automated tests, but author automated tests where you can create them and you can kind of, in a way, forget about them. You keep running them, but you don't necessarily have to do a lot of ongoing maintenance. However your tests function in, Fuji or Geneva, you can have that expectation that it does the exact same thing in Helsinki and Istanbul, and then the future releases we have. So really, it's all about kind of making that learning curve as flat as possible and getting automation, used within your organization and your group.
Awesome. Yeah. We're all about automation, so that makes a lot of sense. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'm going to pass it over to Dave, and Dave's really going to, ask you questions, I guess, and have a conversation around more from the perspective of a QA team at a ServiceNow customer, and try to, just kind of bring out some of the kind of the major features and kind of how CapIO works. So Dave, it's all yours, man.
All right. Thanks, Martin. So just a tiny bit of background, one of the reasons why I care about this is, I came to ServiceNow as a full stack developer, and, I spent a decade or more getting myself to being dissatisfied writing code unless I started with a failing test case, right? So I bit the test-driven development. I drank from that trough a long time ago. And when I came to ServiceNow, kind of the fact that you couldn't do that has always been sort of a sore spot for me. So kind of the same thing that you were talking about, Roger, has always, always been kind of this has always been some of my dream projects is getting things automated. And I'm currently working on Thursday of CreatorCon, I will have an automated testing session. And so I've been neck deep in these issues. So this is very timely for me. So you already mentioned that it's that CapIO is a functional testing. So you're testing by loading the final page and kind of asserting on contents of the page. So tell us a little bit about how given you've got a developer or a customer that's out there doing development work, how can they get their hands on CapIO and kind of find out if it's a good fit for their organization?
Sure. So typically what we do is just jump on a quick call, have kind of a discussion to see if CapIO would be a good fit for them. It's kind of nice to be able to hear what kind of use cases they have in mind. What are the pain points that they're currently experiencing with testing? Sometimes it's as simple as it takes too long. Sometimes it's a little more complex of we have no reliable way to be able to validate this. So we go through kind of make sure that it's CapIO could be a good fit. And then we'll give them a quick overview of CapIO itself, kind of walk through a demo. And once that's done, if it feels like a good fit and they want to go ahead and maybe kick the tires a little bit, we go ahead and give them a demo instance for them to be able to start writing some scripts, maybe against a base instance. And yeah, they can then be a little more hands-on with it, see if it would be a good fit and something they could see getting adopted within their organization.
So when they're doing that evaluation, kind of what what pieces kind of need to exist in the architecture of this? Do they need to install things on their instance, or do they just need to configure an external instance? Like, what's the first steps that they take?
Mm-hmm. So to get CapIO set up, we first need to deploy the CapIO code into the instance itself. Mm-hmm. Since they'll actually be authoring the tests within the ServiceNow UI, that's definitely a critical piece. A second part of that is going to be a test server. And that test server is actually where the execution of the tests occur. So when we're, maybe when it's going through the browser and making modifications to forms, things like that, that happens off instance. And we help them onboard that machine and get it all set up.
And that is solely owned by them, or is that a shared test server?
It's really whatever's appropriate for that group, mm-hmm. Whatever works best for them. We're definitely flexible there. A lot of folks tend to maybe have concerns about like data sovereignty or honestly just kind of ownership and security. Mm-hmm. We definitely facilitate them deploying this within their own infrastructure if that's preferred.
And that's so the test cases themselves live on the instance with the code. So essentially that other instance you're talking about would be like the role of a Selenium server or something like that in an architecture like that. It's actually, it goes out and pulls down the test cases from the target instance and then executes the test cases against the target instance. That's how okay.
Exactly. Yep. You hit the nail right on the head there.
And I'm sorry. And then basically that test server basically is the web client and is acting on the DOM of the downloaded page. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And the tests get executed. We gather reporting based upon the results, and then we go ahead and push those back into the ServiceNow instance.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, is it closer to the Selenium style where you're attaching to an actual physical process, or are you doing your own interpretation of those web pages?
No. So yeah, it actually is based on Selenium.
Okay.
So yeah, that's exactly how it will work. You're dealing with the browsers that you prefer. So if you wanted to officially support, Firefox and Chrome within your organization, you can execute those tests there. There's no requirement for this to only be executable against like Phantom.js or any kind of headless browsers like that.
Gotcha. So you could, I'm sorry. So you could configure it so that essentially you ran the entire suite, once per target browser.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then you'd have results reported back specifically for each one of those.
Okay. Well, that's actually really cool. I didn't know it did that. I'm learning more and more as we go along. So, so when you're doing this, so you're going to need, you've got code that gets installed on the instance. Do you need to be in a special group? I'm presuming there are roles that associate like who can author tests that would have to be granted.
Sure. And there's just a CapIO role, CapIO author, I believe was the name of it. That role would give them access to the test suites as well as the ability to author and execute.
So basically there's one set of, so basically there's not like tiers of it. There's not like a CapIO admin versus a executor versus an author. It's you're basically in the tent or you're not in the tent. Is that right? Exactly. Okay. Right. And once you're in the tent, you could write a test case. You can kick off a test or a suite of tests.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely. And if that was granularity, if that was something that would, maybe if you wanted to maybe segment your users between like I mentioned, executors and test writers. You could do that. That might make it a little bit difficult to actually author, considering you'll want to run these a few times before officially making it part of a suite. But yeah, granularity is, fortunately, ServiceNow is really great about that. So implementing that would be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't make sense to have it the one way where you were an author without execute, but I could see, depending on the organization, I could see the case where you would want an executor that couldn't author.
Right.
That could actually make some sense to me.
Yeah, definitely. Those read only. And there actually is a couple of different places where we have the data sets are kind of split essentially between, you have your test repository and then you have your test reports. So yeah, if we wanted to split that a little bit more, we realistically could just give them access to execute as well as only to the resulting test reports. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about like how you write the test cases and kind of what format, like what do you, when you sit down to write your first test case, what are you writing it in? Like where on the instance, and then like what kind of language are you using to specify the test and the assertions?
Sure. So the actual authoring of the test occur within the ServiceNow platform. And I would kind of equate it to authoring a business rule. We put a lot of effort into making it as familiar as possible. And very similar to any kind of JavaScript authoring and scripting you would have elsewhere in the platform. It is JavaScript, kind of peeking under the hood. Underlying, it's a Node.js implementation, but we put a lot of effort into making sure that, it actually looks asynchronous, similar to what you would deal with inside of a business rule. There's no need to deal with callbacks or promises or anything like that. We abstract all of that away, just again to kind of help reduce that learning curve. So in the end, it would be on the ServiceNow instance and JavaScript within the CapIO application.
And do you have a set of APIs that are specific to CapIO, for doing the assertions, or would that be in some kind of common type framework?
That's actually exposed within the scripting, but we are using a very common one. That's a Chai.js. Chai is the beverage. They have a lot of flexibility there, and we support all of them. You can write yours in more of a traditional expect and exert. But what we've seen is a lot of folks are starting to prefer the should syntax. So you'll see things like, let's say we loaded a variable with a priority that we calculated. We can go ahead and do, priority should be equal to 3 or 2 or whatever that value may be.
So does that, I'm assuming that kind of the rationale for that is so that you could have less technical people writing the cases. Is that where you're heading with that? Exactly.
The syntax itself, regardless of which one you use, it kind of feels like a lather, rinse, repeat, almost like a copy paste. So ideally, it becomes straightforward for folks. You do a couple, and now you're a master at it. But yeah, absolutely, it's more of how can we, what framework was the most expressive, like almost as if it was you speaking through what you would like to do. You throw your hands up and kind of say, okay, this should be 3. Okay, we'll just do that. That's
right.
Validation.
Yeah. I've definitely been in organizations where, where the QA team, did a lot of punching of buttons, and it always bugged me because I always thought a better role for them would be to be authoring sets of reusable tests, right? Because you press a button and that lasts 1 second, and you're going to have to do it again the next time. And you take the 5 minutes and write a test case, and it's durable, and then it'll live on every time. But even better than that is, if the business analyst who's writing the requirement can also write their test case, such that any code, and I don't care what the code looks like, but if the code fulfills this test case, it is by definition done. That to me has always seemed like an extremely sensible way to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's basically what we were trying to do and that's something we continue to do, is figure out, okay, how can you do things once and then not have to do it again? So when we created CapIO, we ourselves are admins and developers. So that was the persona we had in mind when we did it. So that's why you see the introduction of it being scripting. Now, one of the things we've seen is as we've gone through and talked with organizations and done these demos, gotten feedback, we've seen that BAs, business analysts, project managers are actually pretty involved in the testing process. A lot of groups may be short staff on QA, so people wear a lot of different hats. So that's one thing that we're trying to address, is those different personas. So one of the things we have on the roadmap, which we should have done by June 2016, so here in the next month, about the next month, is recording. So there's a browser extension that we're working on specifically for CapIO where you can go ahead and jump into your instance, hit record and start navigating through, maybe manipulating a few forms. And then once you hit stop, it actually generates the CapIO script for you. So you can just go ahead and copy and paste that into a test case. So again, do it once and copy paste and you're all set. You have a test case that you actually didn't have to script up. You just basically did exactly what you used to, running through a manual test, but you're actually coding now.
Yeah, so I do have some experience kind of in replaying, recording and replaying, for in the context of load testing on ServiceNow. And so ServiceNow is kind of by nature a tricky thing to do. When you do that and you have those recorded test cases, is it possible to parameterize that? Or so how do you avoid replaying, how do you avoid the problem where you get like the identical stuff with the identical, how do you have the ability to kind of make some of those things vary when you're doing the test case? Or
you can always make the edits to the client itself. That's kind of the quick answer to that. Even though it may have been generated in that fashion, you can always make changes to those test cases as you would like. That's one thing that we do have on the roadmap that we are kind of trying to wrap our heads around, which is exactly what you're talking about, which would be how can I, in a way, offer templated test cases,
right?
Where you can say things like maybe something similar like a jelly syntax, where you use brackets and that kind of becomes more of a templated language, and you can feed in different data sets. Exactly what you're talking about, reusing that test case, but also making it dynamic enough where you can at runtime send in different values that you would like to get validated. That's something we have on the roadmap. Unfortunately, no plans just yet as far as when that's going to be released, but that's definitely a feature that we find to be definitely critical to make this a really flexible automated solution.
Right. I mean, like the classic example that would be like, say your test creates an incident and then walks it through the flow, right? And just takes it through every step of that. And if you record that, essentially you have the hard-coded sysid, which was that particular record, which is not what you want to be. You don't want to be acting on the same record every time, right? You want to be acting on the newly created one. So templating it, so that you now have a variable, which is return me the sysid of the newly created record. And then that's what we're acting on for the rest of the time.
Yeah. Okay. So the dynamic one, that's definitely more in the advanced phase. Those are power users, gurus at that point. What you're kind of speaking to, those use cases we actually can support. One of the things we've recently added in is the best way I could describe it is basically context within a suite. Actually, Scratchpad. Within workflows, you have the ability to maintain a scratch pad that you can use maybe in other steps of your workflow or in other scripts within the application. That's basically functionality you can have within a test suite as well. Is basically a scratch pad where, let's say you created an incident, you can go ahead and save that temporarily to the context and then make a reference to that later in another test case.
Okay.
So, and that's that test case exactly that you're talking about is what came of that. Because ultimately you want to create an incident and then go back into that incident and maybe make a few more changes.
Exactly.
So ideally the way that plays out is you create your incident, and when you're doing creation, go ahead and capture that number, that incident number, maybe load it into maybe just a new incident variable. It's an object you can just append to.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in another test case, just go ahead and do a lookup for that incident, jump onto that page, and again, start doing those validations as you would like to.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit. So we talked about who authors them and kind of how. As somebody who has been writing, Q unit test cases for a lab much of this week, it's rare. It's actually cause for popping champagne when your test case does exactly what you want the very first time you do it. So tell us about how a newly authored test case. How do you kind of verify that? How do you kick it off? How do you, how can you debug it if necessary?
Sure. So the easiest thing to do would be to just go ahead and associate your kind of work in progress with a temporary test package. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're working on new functionality. Just go ahead and create a test package that has the suite that you're working on, and go ahead and associate it with that one. Just so you can execute that one any number of times, and you're not necessarily, filling up the reporting for a bigger test package with kind of your proofs out and your tests. Mm-hmm. Once you're done with that one, the suite can stay there. You can now, once you're finished, you just associate that suite with maybe your regression or your test package. You can associate a suite with any number of test packages.
Gotcha.
But yeah, once you're done, just go ahead and associate it there. But while you're doing your testing, you can go ahead and execute those tests, and you'll get the same feedback you would for, the larger subsets that you would have. So you'll get the expected and the actuals. So, the one that I tend to bring up is like priority calculated values. Mm-hmm. If you expected it to be a 3, but it came back as a 2, we tell you that.
Right.
In addition to that, we take a screenshot of the current state of the browser when that test fails. So that should offer, pictures worth 1,000 words. So that should give you the ability to kind of see, okay, what was going on in the browser? Oh yeah, that's obvious. An error message came up, or a success message came up that shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those together should be able to get you a good portion of the way there.
So I like that feature. So if you were looking at the reports, you can kind of drill into the failure cases and actually look at the browser screen of what failed.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely critical. Since these are running off instance, mm-hmm. We can give you your expected and actuals, but that's not necessarily as descriptive. Being able to see it is a totally different story. So mm-hmm. that was definitely critical for us.
So where do these reports live? Are they on instance, or where do the reports and the results end up?
Right. Those do get pushed back into ServiceNow. So within your test packages, are basically a container for your suites. Mm-hmm. So when you go to execute them, those actually get associated with the test package. And those stay there as long as you want. Mm-hmm. We know folks have compliance requirements necessary for proving that you actually ran your tests, mm-hmm. And what were the results. So yeah, those stick around. You can go back and historically see if you've been if you've had passes or failures. You can even drill down specifically into a particular test case and kind of see the history of that one. Maybe you made a change recently and made a change to the script itself, mm-hmm. And that may be why it's failing. So yeah, you do have those capabilities to do that, and the reporting has all of that available to you.
All right, and I'm going to finish up with the question you always have to ask in any ServiceNow context, or it will be the first question you get, which is, tell us about the fee structure of this, and kind of, does it have any impact on the ServiceNow licensing? Like, if you add somebody to this test package, are they now a fulfiller that has to be licensed?
Mm-hmm. So let's see. So typically the folks who would use it, those are going to very likely be your developers and admins. Mm-hmm. So really the only requirement there would be the individual to have an ITIL license. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, CapIO itself, just like ServiceNow, it's a subscription model, and we do have the cost based upon how many number of production instances you have. We don't really care about pre-prod. We know that larger organizations are going to have a lot. If you're lucky, individual dev environments, more than likely not. But either way, production environments, and also based upon the size of your organization. And it does not impact licensing in any other way, aside from the individuals and their ITIL licenses.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much for answering my questions. And I think it's very interesting to me. So I'm sure it's of interest to our listeners as well. So Martin, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was it was a great discussion. I think there's a lot of great information there for our listeners. So just a couple of closing points. So Roger, as we talked about at the top of the podcast, Cerna Solutions currently has 2 apps in the store, TrackMeet and Hybrid. Do you have any plans to bring CapIO to the store?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as you had mentioned, TrackMeet and Hybrid we have out in the store, and we absolutely plan to get CapIO out there as well. Anything we can do to get these, this product in the hands of folks and get automated testing, out there and in the field and actively being used. Absolutely. All we want to do is facilitate usage of it. So.
Right on.
Yep.
So
sure.
where can ServiceNow customers go today to learn more about CapIO?
Sure. Best thing to do would just head over to the Cerna Solutions website. Within there, we actually have within the menu, you can look at all of our products. Hybrid, TrackMeet, as well as CapIO. And from there, you can reach out to us, and we can go ahead and again set up a quick call, see if it's a good fit, and get a demo instance in your hands.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll just close it by saying that, as I think Dave mentioned, he's going to be doing a close to a 2-hour hands-on workshop on automated testing at CreatorCon. So if that's your thing, if that's what you do, that would be the place for you to be, to get really, really in-depth, leading edge training on automated testing in ServiceNow. We hope to see you at CreatorCon, and thanks for listening today.